If you have a low demand event, you'll often find entry price seats available right through the sales cycle, and those offers and discounts not driving the volume you expect and need. Is our collective obsession over price distracting us from what really matters? Demand. What is it and how do we measure it? Welcome to Leading the Way. Okay, so the word demand, can we just start there and talk about demand? How should organizations understand demand? What should we know about that word?
That there are varying levels of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that there's no getting around the fact that you are going to be in high demand sometimes, you're going to be in low demand sometimes, and actually most of the time you're going to be in between those two things. And so we need to be thinking about the experience of our audiences in those different environments. What is it like when they're attending in low demand? What is it like when they're attending in mid demand? And of course, everybody loves a sellout. Everybody loves it when we're in high demand. That's easy. That's easy for it to feel good. But it's when we're in these mixed levels of demand where we've got to be really thoughtful.
Well, I just want to ask the question actually, does high demand mean sold out?
No, not necessarily. No, it's a really good example. I mean, high demand is relative, right?
We used to say sold out is a management prerogative. Saying you're sold out is a management prerogative. We used to say that. And the point is that when you get to a point when you've gone about as clean as you're gonna go in the old days, when you had, all the tickets are gone and they're clean from the booth. But when you get there, call it. It's sold clean and tell that story. I don't know that matters so much to the specific. If we can sell every last seat, we should. But I also think we right now are particularly obsessed with percentage of capacity sold and selling out as a measure of our success.
And our self-worth.
And our self-worth,
We do.
which is a total false narrative.
Right.
And the other, what else is super interesting is that what we don't do, I clicked onto this morning, actually. What we don't do, we say, client, this is magnet, this is honey. You're gonna have 500 people here and 2,500 people there. But we need to make darn sure that we make the experience for those 500 people as rich, feel as good, as special. And I'm not sure. I think we kind of put our tail between our legs.
No, we get embarrassed. We pull back on the experience. We in the sector means we staff fewer ushers. We staff fewer people in the bars. We maybe turn the lights off in some parts of our building. And we go into cost-saving mode rather than experience-enhancing mode.
Especially for you 500 people who are your active, super active, loyalists.
Most valuable customers you have in the hall.
Most recent and frequent.
Most recent and frequent, right? Mm-hmm. And we immediately, instead of going into enhancing their experience mode, we go into cost-cutting mode.
Right.
Oh, I don't want to turn that light on. I don't want to have to pay that bar staff. I don't want to.
Some of that's smart. You want to shut off lights so that it creates a sense of, but your bigger point is the point. Yeah.
So maybe I'm asking the obvious here. Why do we want to create a sense of success? Why do we want to create a perception of success? Why do we want it to feel like a moment, a special?
Customers.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what difference does that make to customer behavior?
It's infectious.
Right.
It's infectious. It spreads.
Right.
It is something, that's the thing that you remember, is how it feels at that show.
Right.
And if you can do this right with 500 people as opposed to 2,500 people, if we can make that feel really good, we've got a better shot at getting them to come back.
The perception is that this organization is valuable, that it's a wonderful experience, and the money follows. Mm-hmm. The philanthropic money follows, the sponsorship money follows, the future frequency follows, the subscription base follows.
It impacts the artists on stage too. We talk about this a lot, right? And for those who've been on stage, they know you feel it on stage when there's a sparsely filled house or when you feel really disconnected from the audience. You notice it, you feel it. And there are times where if actors and performers are being honest with themselves, it probably has an impact on their performance. And so we can create this virtuous cycle of a positive experience by ensuring that the audience is close together, that they're having a great time, that the artists on stage are feeding and fueling off of that to achieve this feeling of success and, oh my gosh, I want to come back, and high quality, and that they'll talk about it and tell people about it.
But the ways that we're doing that, how is that impacting demand? By issuing comps or papering the house to fill gaps, by letting, when the lights go down, to hear the flap of seats as people march their way down to the front of the circles or more. What impact is that having? Is that okay? Is that having a detrimental impact on future demand? What's the impact of those strategies that we're employing right now
to dress a
house?
Well, comps send a message to the receivers that I can get access to free tickets. It automatically changes the perception of demand and success.
And it changes the perception of value.
Completely.
You wouldn't give this away to me if you didn't have to.
Right.
I wouldn't be getting these seats. I wouldn't be getting this discount if you didn't feel like you had to or you really needed it. We are subtly influencing behavior of our current and future customers. And what we tell ourselves, maybe to sleep a little easier at night, is what we tell ourselves is they're going to love it so much they're going to want to buy a ticket. Well, and that's the gamble that I'm paying, but the data says that that's actually not what happens.
Now, what is true is that comps are currency, and it's not going away. And so anybody watching this is going to go, come on, guys. We use comps for real reasons. But there's a big, big difference between comps that are really managed vis-a-vis demand and carefully controlled. If I have something that's selling well, then I'm going to limit comp inventory because that thing is in demand. And I'm not going to let comps go a go-go, period. And I'm going to use them as an asset I can trade on judiciously elsewhere. And so judiciously is a funny word. I remember sitting, God rest its soul, New York City Opera, when it was still in existence, sitting with everybody in a rehearsal room that had an allocation of comps, like marketing and artistic, everyone who had comps. And I had a report that said, okay, this is how many you get, and this is how many you're using. And what are you using those for exactly? Development director, well, we give 100 comps to I'm making this up, but we give 100 comps to everybody who writes a $10,000 check. Really? What if we were to say you give 10 tickets to that 10,000? I literally adjudicated the specifics. It was very uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. But that's a leadership issue. It's the reason why in our pacing meetings, our revenue pacing meetings, we say, you all have to make decisions as a leadership team about how you're making these decisions. This isn't just a, come up artistic director and get access through the box office for your free tickets for all your friends thing.
It's right. There's opportunity costs in time for marketing teams to have to dress the house and nerd out about opportunity costs, right? If they're feeling pressure to dress the house because there is an expectation of filling to a certain volume, which may or may not have been driven by data or the appropriate expectations for that show, doesn't matter. That expectation trickles down to our sales and marketing folks who then in their, many, many busy hours a week are now having to make decisions about how do I spend this time to dress the house as opposed to that time that could have been spent on selling the next show, optimizing and building demand, optimizing revenue on the other. And in the moment, that's maybe not the highest and best use of that extra hour of marketing time. So there are problematic costs that we don't think about that trickle down from those desires to just feel like I need more people here, I need more people here.
So I want to talk about the two, there's a lot happening in the middle, but I want to talk specifically about low demand and high demand, the extremes of where we operate, because we counsel in revenue pacing meetings that those are the two places that we should be focused. So low demand events are not going to go away. There are still going to be the need to dress the house, depending on what you've done with your scale plan. So are there ways that we can incentivize audience behavior when we know and we can see in pacing that we've got a situation low demand that doesn't devalue the product?
Yes.
Tell us.
Yes, and. But. So the trick is that we're not always right. But at the beginning of a season, I will work with an organization to say, let's ID them. And when we know that this, I'm going to keep going back to it, honey program That is the art for the art, art for the art, which is a beautiful thing. And our patrons and audiences think so too. But when we know that, we can create programs on the front end, group sales programs. What else can we do early? We're not going to sell it out through these programs, so we have to get real about that. Defining success is always a thing.
Yeah. No, I think this is where you can be really thoughtful about donor perks and donor incentives. This is where you can be really thoughtful about trying to increase frequency and think about test drive opportunities or very targeted loyalty-driven types of discounting efforts that are there to help increase and identify frequency.
But everybody books late. So why, what, I can't do that early, can I?
But they don't.
Yeah, you can and should be doing it early, right?
Yeah.
There is something about when a person is shopping for a show and they're looking for a performance, the perception of success that we talk about actually begins when they're looking at the available seat map online. It isn't just after they've bought the ticket and they've sat down at the seat. It begins when they are looking at what's available. And when we see how uncomfortable does that feel to be looking at a show that you're wanting to buy tickets to and see all of these seats available. What does that start to signal to you from that very moment about potential quality or, you know, is this the right show? Am I making the right decision? Immediately could start to be undermined. So we have to move more of those efforts earlier as opposed to late, so that when more people are buying closer to the performance, because there isn't the urgency, there isn't the scarcity of inventory to actually change behavior enough, that they're at least looking at maps that are going to be better.
Can we stimulate those low demand performances with incentives, offers? Should we?
We should, especially early, and we can, right? And I'm not talking about massive discounts. I'm talking about elevating the affordability that we already have, right? Sometimes there is just a lack of awareness about the fact that a show has affordably priced seats if price is actually the barrier to the reason it's low demand.
That's why I hesitate.
And it so often isn't,
right?
But this gives us excuses to be in touch with people. There's really interesting data out there about offers that I see again and again and again, is the offer becomes the shiny thing to get the attention of the buyer. The offer is often redeemed at rates that are below 50%. The offer isn't the thing. The offer is the thing that gets attention. So it can become a strategy to find a new and different way to just get someone's attention in this really busy world about how to start to build their awareness about a show that they might be interested in.
What I wouldn't want people to take away is for low demands, discount.
Right.
Because there is not, price will not create an incentive for a mass audience to love your high art or highly niche or brand new work. It will not.
That's correct.
So this price will not drive that, but it can create incentives with certain types of audiences.
Stimulating demand takes time. And I think this is the part that people struggle with, is we jump to price because it's easy. It's easy. It's the easy excuse. It's the easy strategy to say, well, just change price or just throw an offer out there. But even to my point about the offer, about it being targeted and strategic, the harder part is actually having to really think about, with who should I be stimulating demand with? And when we talk about measuring and understanding demand, it's not just counting seats. It's counting people. It's counting relationships and what kinds of relationships we have. Where do I have demand? Even in an overall low demand performance, with whom am I having some demand? Is it my existing loyalists? Am I reactivating some folks here that maybe I haven't in some other shows? Or is this interesting to new people, but actually not so interesting to my database, but just at not high enough volume? We see all of those situations in low demand shows. And so if you can understand who has demand, it can help you inform how to stimulate it further, whether it's with offer or just increasing messaging along the campaign.
You know, back in the early days, and today, actually, we don't have enough staff or marketing resources to do everything perfectly right now. And so I will literally say to clients, ignore shows 1, 2, and 3. Like, stop it. Don't spend any time and money there. Because the risk on the by over fixating here prevents you from maximizing what's possible on these other shows.
It's the opportunity cost.
And it's the opportunity cost. And so they'll be like, what? And I'll say, you're going to blame me. You'll put it in your strip ad maybe. You'll include it on a postcard for something else. But otherwise, let it go this year, this time. Our job is to do the exploit what we've got in the programming on the other side, which leads you to the hot shows.
Well, I wonder before we go there,
Yeah.
I just want to ask one more question about the role of the scale plan when it comes to low demand.
And that's the magic, right?
Right.
Exactly. So if you've got it scaled in a way that orients bodies in the perception window, whatever that looks like for your venue, when I come in and I'm looking at the stage and I front to back, side to side, I need to see that filled. That's the part of your venue that your scale plan must address first in our playbook.
I think the scale plan, I love how we describe this in helping people understand the power of a scale plan is actually not in your one hall. It's in transforming your one hall into 4.
Exactly.
I can have an incredible experience at 4 different levels of demand because of my scale hall. I'm not stuck with one building. That means if I don't sell 800 seats, it feels like crap. I actually have 4 venues. And so I have a venue within this venue that allows me to have an incredible experience at 200, at 400, 600, and 800 people attending. That's a strategic scale plan.
And we have always taught this. Like, we have gone up and shown people what it looks like, and we've described how to do it. People have walked away with, written, and it is not done regularly. And it's not done because the transformation from traditional scale plans to this takes time, communication, effort, hand-holding, management, which done right and well, like we saw during the pandemic, deepens customer relationships. Do people get pissed if their cheese is moved? Yes, sometimes they do. Mm-hmm. But the long-term impact of what you've just described, the flexibility to have 3 or 4 venues in one, is so high impact.
Mm-hmm. It gets us out of that feeling of the only way to be successful is a sellout.
Yes.
Like, it gets to this definition of success. If I have one scale plan where I have to put the whole venue on sale regardless of how much demand that performance has, because in order to have all of my price points available, that means I've got to have these back seats here and these on the sides and the ones down front. If I don't have demand for that, it just exacerbates the feeling that if we're not selling out, we're failing. And so the scale plan strategies allow us to recognize the fact that we are not always going to need every seat for every performance that we put on sale. Right.
We make decisions to present or produce certain programs with the expectation that and hope that there will be demand. And we should positively exploit that on behalf of the mission. Predatory scale plans have everything to do with when we are selling to that 4th venue, the large hall, and the 1, 2, and 3 halls have been full. And now in the back of the venue, the remaining seats that are left, the last seats available for our most in-demand production are 125 or 90 or 300.
Or you can get what you can get. It doesn't have to be the lowest price.
It's absolutely the right thing for those prices to be high because they are the last seats available. And there's nothing predatory about that.
It's the way the whole economy works. It's the way demand-based pricing works. It works in planes, it works in trains, it works in hotels.
You buy
it
earlier,
reinforces loyalty.
You become a subscriber.
Shapes behavior.
Exactly.
So, how do we communicate that effectively if we're in relationships with our customers and we are dealing with a customer who on the day of the show, 2 days before the show, is
I cannot believe.
Yeah.
I cannot believe.
How can we ensure that our organizational values, all of the things, that we can communicate this in a way that doesn't feel exploitative? Because unfortunately, those high ticket prices, the dynamic pricing on big pop events, Broadway recently. It gets the headlines,
Yeah.
and the assumption is that every
Yeah.
single ticket must have been priced at
So
that
the
price.
answer is, if it's, let's assume for a moment there's a run. The answer is Mrs. Jones. Yes, that price is $125 on Saturday night. That night is sold well through. But on Tuesday night, there's a $50 seat available. And as members and subscribers, for next time, buy earlier, because we have $20 seats available for every single production we have here. Or our members and subscribers get access to. If it's a shorter run, that's harder. Like it's Saturday night and it's the last night of the run, and I know, and this production is in demand, and the people who have access to these seats are going to love the production, and you will too. And if you want to buy this equivalent next year, I don't know, like there's a way to say, this is great art, and we're so pleased to bring it. And here are the ways, here's the tricks, here's the ways to get better access at a different price next time.
So I'm not phoning up, I'm online. I'm on the website. How do we navigate this on our websites and with technology?
We don't do that well, can I say that?
We don't do that well. Although I see some organizations starting to more consistently communicate everywhere about, we are sold out of prices at these particular price points.
Right.
These price points go early. What we have available now reflects the current demand for this performance. And I do think we need to stop being shy about the way other people react to our prices and feel guilty about how externally some people react to our prices. Because for every Mrs. Jones who feels upset about that price, there are others who are paying it. As long as we're still seeing those seats being sold, there are others who are paying it, who are happy to pay that, who are willing to pay that. It is not our job to ensure that we have a price point that every individual can feel good about. It's our job to make sure that we can provide price, choice, and options to folks, either through a run, by buying early, by having different price points at some point along the run, by creating opportunities for choice. But it isn't our obligation to be able to haggle or negotiate or meet people where they value the work.
This does take, and we have always in our consultancy spent time here, but it does take training of your box office staff, training, scripting, practicing, getting people comfortable with and having the courage to feel like I'm proud to work in an organization like this. Not I feel guilty and embarrassed and saying things that would actually suggest that they aren't aligned with their employer.
Right.
And that takes, this isn't just a half-cocked, like, just go and do it. And you have to be planful. Back to our conversation about pricing. What is our culture about pricing? And if we're going to develop a pricing strategy of scale plans that are staged, 4 halls in one, of yes, we are going to price fairly and based on the market when we've got demand, then we're going to train our people, have high expectations of both the service they deliver, but also the responsibility they have to us as an organization too. This isn't just a flip you switch on and say, let's try it. You have to be planful and careful with it.
I want to make sure that we should listen and take on board the feedback that we're getting from folks about price sensitivity. But what I often see is that those are the data points that people hang on to within organizations, not the other data points that provide the contrary story about the people we don't hear. It's a squeaky wheel thing sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
We get really hung up about the squeaky wheel and we forget to just sense check the squeaky wheel compared to the rest of the data that says, well, I'm really sorry that felt unaffordable to those people, but others found those seats, bought those seats, and we generated the revenue that we needed to generate. The revenue that we believe organizationally that the art we're putting on stage is worth it.
Yes.
And so I do want to be careful that and it's human instinct, it's human nature, right? We take this very emotionally sometimes about the way people react to price and demand. And so sometimes it's good to take it in, it's real, and listen to it, and yet just balance it with what the rest of the data says.
Can we talk a little bit then about demand and its impact on our frequency programs, subscription, membership, multi-buy? We have just talked before about the role of frequency, why it's important, and the math behind that, maths. But how can demand incentivize behavior to be more recent and frequent?
Well, the best examples that, outside of North America, in the UK, are membership programs that offer priority booking. This is the most popular, most important and impactful benefit in membership programs in the UK. And it is something that oftentimes gets organizations feel like they can't fully leverage enough or often enough if we don't have enough demand for some of our product. Yeah. But we have to remember that demand is personal. That demand is subject to taste and preference, right? And so just because we may not have the big blockbuster comedy or the big touring West End show coming through, it doesn't actually mean that it isn't worth us creating loyalty and incentive programs and membership programs that really position the fact that, well, when we are in high demand or when there is work coming to our stages that is in high demand for you, that you are going to be able to get an elevated experience about when you book and how you book and what prices you may be able to get. So I think that correlation between demand and loyalty on an individual event basis in the UK is actually really, really powerful, and something that we try to do, I think, in North America, where we've got shows that are maybe not on subscription, but we will give subscribers first access to when we talk about add-ons and specials and things. So there's similar approaches like that in North America.
But if you are running an organization, I remember, back in the day when I was a baby marketing director, at a symphony orchestra, and I worked with Rick Lester. Sold out is a management concept. And we were darn close to sold out, if not sold clean. So it wasn't like we were taking a 75% sold house and calling it sold out. But by marketing the fact that there was demand, it does have well told, that story does have an impact on people's behavior. Because if that message then is, become a member and you'll get first in line. Become a subscriber and you'll get first in line and access to the best seats. Those aisle seats you want. Demand changes what we would call rational behavior. Irrational behavior is paying $90 for the last row of the balcony. It's because that's what's left. Irrational behavior is becoming a subscriber. But the only way I'm going to get Hamilton, the only way I'm going to get a consistently good experience or even access is to do this thing.
Is that fair?
It's absolutely fair because I'm choosing. It's my choice. I want this thing in my life and I want a good experience. So I'm going to do that thing.
We don't do a great job of going back to reinforce the good decision that our members and our subscribers made. We lean so heavily into it, want to get them to make that decision, to make that choice and say, yes, I'm going to be a subscriber. Yes, I'm going to be a member. We lean so hard into the messaging. Well, here's what you're going to get, and here's the benefits, and here's the treatment. And then they say yes. And then we kind of stop communicating to them about that until it's time to ask them to do that again.
That's not fair.
But there's examples, there's a few, not a lot, but what I've liked is taken some bold organizations, right? Because I think there's this fairness or this fear about price and demand, about going back to subscribers after a really successful performance and just say, just so you know, single tickets to the show you just saw sold for $105.
Oh, yeah, wow.
Your tickets were $50.
Yeah, right.
You made an incredible decision.
Oh, that's so
good
smart.
on you.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Right? Otherwise, how would they know? How does a subscriber know what the last seats in the balcony are going for?
So
They're going to feel good about looking around and it feels sold out and I'm glad I got my seats, but they may not actually know the real value of the decision that they made.
I love that tactic, and that would require courage and real comfort. And if you had a strategy, if you had a culture and a strategic conversation about price, and how you were going to manage it, then you would say, okay, I'm as CEO, I might want to see that copy. I might, because that's kind of my board is going to talk about that. But we're grounded in that strategy.
And we're going to do it 2 months before subscription renewal.
Yeah.
Because I just want to remind you and reinforce this decision that before I ask you to renew that decision, I just want you to know you just saved $100 on that show.
Why would I not just do dynamic pricing? Why do I need a scale plan that deals with 4, 5 different scenarios that you've described? Why can't I just do dynamic pricing? Won't dynamic pricing help with those low demand situations? Won't it ensure that revenue is maximized regardless of how my house is scaled?
But that doesn't deal with perception. Doesn't deal with the experience for the artists or the audience.
And I also think it puts it forwards or elevates price in a way that doesn't actually stimulate or drive demand in the ways that we've talked about. So we think dynamic pricing is important when it is used in partnership with demand-based pricing. And so we talk about demand-based pricing is your cake. Dynamic pricing is just the icing on the cake. Dynamic pricing is not enough. It's too complicated. It's too hands-on. It takes way too much time and energy for that to be your main strategy. And in fact, it shifts your entire perception away from why aren't I putting energy into my marketing campaign? If the only levers I pull are about price, I'm just going to make everything dynamically priced regardless of the level of demand that I'm at. Right? It takes the attention away from the things that we know actually build awareness and stimulate demand, which is communication and engagement and audience development, all of those efforts. It's icing, right? If you make it your cake, it's not going to work.
Yeah, I don't want to demonize it because it's super smart.
Totally.
Super smart.
Yeah. And technology can really help
I was
us.
just going to
Technology
say,
can help.
it will make it, it is making it easier and easier, but it does take your eye off of the strategy of creating an environment where people feel like you are in demand, feel like the experiences, they leave saying that was wonderful, not that was a barn that was empty. It's the icing on top of the cake.
If 70% of our audiences or more are buying their tickets online, how do they even know what pricing adjustments we're making? How do they even know we've got this great technology that's helping us match price with what people are willing to buy? If we aren't getting them to the website in the first place, all that work and effort in hand-wringing and worrying about price is for naught, right? We think that people are going to somehow just know that we've lowered the price of that seat. And we haven't built energy or awareness in the product. So it's a distraction. Sometimes it's a distraction.
I agree.
It's a powerful tool when we can leverage it in the right way, when our other tools are working to drive demand and awareness to the product, to the website. But leaning just on price and dynamic pricing to be the cure-all ignores actually the more impactful work.
It's why we use the word, and I've always, it's for, maybe not the very beginning, but it's why we have said demand management in our consulting, not pricing. We've always said pricing is a tactic. It's an important conversation to have. We've been talking about it for a long time now, us three. But we're putting pricing in the context of demand. We're putting scale plans in the context of demand. We put investment in marketing in the context of demand. We put discounts in the context of demand, comps in the context of demand.
Demand's the thing.
So we talked about baking the cake and icing the cake. It's time for us to go and bake a cake together.
Oh no.
Cooking show.
Okay, let's go and look at a real world example of a scale plan and see how this plays out with some actual data and how we can look at perception of success with a real scale plan. Welcome to Scale My Hall with Jill, Eric, and Brad. Look at you already, like good students.
We are.
I read the brief.
So you all have a blank seating plan in front of you from a real client of TRG's. And what we're going to do together is look at a heat map And a heat map is a way of us using data to understand how frequently a seat is sat in an auditorium through different demand levels. I want you to look at that heat map, have a little bit of discussion with each other about what you're seeing, and then you're going to draw a new scale plan for this organization that helps improve perception of success while maximizing revenue. Okay? So let's reveal the heat map to our team. Here it is. Ooh.
Wow.
All right.
Uh-huh.
Okay, before we look at detail of this heat map, can you explain to us what we're looking for? What are we hoping to get out of analyzing this data?
Well, I think we talk about perception of success, and I think what we're looking for here is ideally, we want to create that sold out feeling even when we're not sold out.
That's right.
And so here we're looking at a map that isn't sold out, obviously. And so how could we create a sold out feeling if this were all the seats we sold towards a particular performance? And so for us, that would mean looking front to back, side to side. How do we use price? And how do we use our inventory to shape the behavior of the ticket buyers to ensure that we can feel that sold out feeling, getting everybody as close to each other and to the stage as possible?
Because when they don't feel that, people question their choice. You know, we talk in the sector so much about how many new buyers we're getting all the time. And one of the things people, you know, it's an investment. So you're questioning, A, do I feel comfortable in this space? Am I going to like it? And did I make the right choice with those dollars? So when there's no one sitting near you or you see empty seats, you start to question whether or not I made that choice. It plants a seed of doubt.
One of the things we've talked about from the beginning of the firm's time is all of our clients need 3 or 4 venues, 3 or 4 halls with different capacities. And with a good scale plan, you can actually create 3 or 4 venues. So this venue may be 1,800 seats-ish. So we can create in this a well-sold 250 seat venue, a well-sold 750 seat venue, and a well-sold out 1,800 seat venue, making it up. That maximizes the income at each of those demand levels.
Say a bit more about, so there's a perception of success element here, but there's also a maximization of revenue. What are we looking for with that, and how can a scale plan help us maximize revenue?
Well, I'd start us off by saying that's about literally looking at and counting demand by price point at different demand levels. So each of those houses have a need for price levels that are different on a volume basis, right?
Yeah, there is. And it's important to, if you continue that analogy further of having 4 venues in one, each for different levels of demand, what we would counsel is that as demand increases, so should the average ticket price, because demand and price are importantly linked together. And so as we go from the 200 seat venue to the 600 seat venue, the average ticket price should increase as we fill front to back, side to side.
How might we see that change in a more traditionally scaled house, where often the lower price seats are actually at the rear of the house and last to sell? Does that have an impact on the average price over the course of a sales cycle?
It certainly does. So imagine a traditionally scaled house like this in a sellout, or getting near to a sellout, where obviously the demand is going to be moving from front to back naturally for the most part, especially if you're in a high demand show. If a show has really high demand and price isn't actually a barrier, you are going to see this fill front to back. And so the very last seats in a venue like this to sell are going to be those in the gallery that are currently at the lowest price. So when we are reaching our maximum levels of demand for a show, we are actually collecting the lowest prices that we can on that.
So actually those seats don't sell first?
They don't. They don't always. Some do, right? But
they will if there's incentives.
Sure.
So if we have an inexpensive seat in the balcony and my wallet says I want to spend $30, then you tell me where to sit.
Right.
So looking at like a heat map helps us to learn the encouragement or the directions we're pointing people to where we've placed price.
Right.
Let us know people saying, oh, that price is important to me. I'm going to pick that seat, or that's the right entry point for me.
When I start talking to folks about this, I'll say, when you put an event on sale, if you've got a traditional scale plan, people will scatter. The advanced buyers will scatter based on their wallet. But as demand grows, we every venue, GA or scaled, fills front to back. And when we, after that on sale date, as the volume grows, we do, as Brad described, push people into those less and less
it's
expensive
helpful
seats.
to also think about the quantity of seats at the prices, right? That's where there's really, and I know this is a little more nerdy and a little more where the data comes into it, but the numbers of seats we have at prices should be determined by demand for those prices, not the architecture of our buildings, right? And so it's important to look at some venues and say they may have a low price, they may be in the back, and they may be putting them all on sale all at once, but they're not using them all. They don't need them all. They're not being sold. So how many seats do we really need at a particular price is an important approach. Right?
There, maybe a wrap up, I would say, is when I start a conversation with an organization or group of people about this, I'll say, with a blank plan. In a traditional venue, where do you see the most expensive seats? And people will say, on the orchestra floor and in the first few rows of the balcony. And where do you see the least expensive seats? And they will say, in the very, very, very back of the balcony. And then I ask the question, where is the most, where, if it were full all the time, would everyone feel great? Artists and audiences. And everyone is able to draw what we call the perception window, which is typically the front 70% of the venue. And so if we can get that sold front to back and side to side, and then have the average price paid by the customer incrementally increase as demand increases, therein lies the magic of the way that we approach the scale planning work. So what do we notice first?
Well, all that heat right down front and center. So to say out loud, the stage is at the top of this picture,
thank you.
right?
Yeah,
so,
super helpful.
so it helps to orient that. So there's some pit seating, right? You can see in those first couple of rows. But yeah, that heat right in the center of the center orchestra, all towards the front, pretty well filled.
And heat on price bands.
Yeah, look at all those people at the very
right.
end.
So you can tell what the pricing, where price breaks are, by where those red dots are.
Yeah, well, and where where you see horizontal banding kind of going all the way across, and those horizontal bands where there is heat, that where they are adjacent to places where there is no heat, right, does let us know where price breaks are in the original scale plan.
What's interesting is to look at where there isn't color. So all that means someone hasn't sat in that seat over the course of the season. So the front and the sides, we see lots of pockets of white happening.
Yeah, imagine you were sitting in that, it's a mezzanine in that middle section, and you're sitting in the front of the mezzanine looking down at the orchestra. There's seats there that you're going to see being empty. And so when we talk about perception of success, that's kind of what we mean, right? How is it influencing my perception of success to sit in the mezzanine, to look down at the orchestra and go, ugh, there's some empty seats down there. Is this show any good?
Did I make the wrong choice with my ticket?
Right.
And if you look at this, this isn't an atypical result, right?
Yeah.
So scaling, if we think about perception of success, this is, 30 years ago. This is a problem if you're a patron, building on what you were saying. No matter where people are seated, unless they're in that center section that Brad started us off with, you're looking around and you're seeing empty somewhere in this venue. And this venue has tickets sold to it. So the intention is to redesign, rejigger this thing. So that the people, so that it feels and looks different than this.
And Jill, to that point, it's interesting, not so much for the reds, but the greens and the yellows all have empty in their sight lines. Almost every single green and yellow seat in some, if you're panning across, you're probably not looking back, because most people don't look.
The reds. Look at the reds in the back, the reds in the front of the mezz, or whatever that's called, that first balcony. They're looking down, house right and left. Even if they go over the back of the orchestra floor, the stalls, they're still seeing it.
I want to point out the low price seats traditionally. So look, is in the map, it's the gallery. So we're looking at that section in the bottom. It's a large gallery. There's a couple of different price zones happening, but you can see where the lowest price
Totally.
seats are.
Yeah.
And you know what else I
Totally.
noticed there? There's a lot of green and a lot of white.
Right.
So they have a lot of lowest price seats going unsold. They have more than they need because this particular venue is putting the entire theater on sale all at once, right? So it's a good thing to know.
Yeah, absolutely.
This map is when they put the entire hall available on sale all at once. And you can
Right.
see where, okay, there are people who are drawn to a particular price point there in the back, but it's not full. They're not selling every low price seat. And in fact, there's big empty spaces where they've got the lowest price seats.
We also have these in the corners in the orchestra as well. It's a similar story. It's not as extreme in its visual, but
Is this one night or a run condensed? I didn't ask that question at the front. So is this
This would be several performances.
Yeah, right.
These lower demand performances, think about them stacked on top of each other.
That's what I wanted to
right?
be sure. So this isn't one night, this is a run.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's interesting to think about the questions you would ask to understand a little more of the story behind the colors. Like,
Right.
who's a subscriber in here?
You wouldn't know.
Who's a single ticket buyer in
Right.
here? Like, does
So-
loyalty tell us something
Yeah,
about
yeah.
where? The other thing that's super, Jill, you're from the orchestra world as well. Like, does this look like an orchestra?
It does not.
Yeah, and why is that?
Because in most orchestra seat maps, it skews house left so that I can see the pianist's hands more often. The subscribers
Yeah.
will skew house left because they know to sit house left.
However, this looks like to me, there's significant heat in the upper levels, both, especially in that middle mezz, but there's significant heat in the gallery as well, while there are still many seats in the center of the theater going unsold. So if I was playing detective here, I would look at this and say, this looks like the behavior we tend to see in opera and ballet dance companies, where audiences tell us that they have a preference to sit higher up,
wanna watch
to have
the
a different
patterns.
view from the stage.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So even different genres, whether it's wanting to sit piano side or whether wanting to understand, being able to see the entire stage, to see patterns or stagecraft, that there are different ways to think about the scale of hall and different demand patterns based on what we're putting on the stage.
I love that analogy of the detective because what you're describing, both of you, there are clues through all of this that isn't, a lot is evident in the visual, but there's a lot of question. We have a question for you, scale hall plan, that will help us learn even more about where that is happening. Yeah.
The other piece that I see so clearly, and we see this often, but those seats in the back of the gallery, those seats have got to be less expensive, materially less expensive. The only reason that is going to be so red
Price is
and
like-
so densely, price is driving it. So
Yeah.
it says to me, their very least tickets are in the last few rows, may go across house right and left. Because if I'm going to choose an inexpensive seat, I'm going to try to nab one in the middle.
Yeah.
Well, center is king, right? Center is king and queen.
Yeah.
Center is the monarch.
Right.
What we see in many of the
Totally.
theaters, that even in the low price,
Yeah.
there's a big difference in demand in the back of the hall between the center and the sides, even though those seats are
And there
exactly
are
the
so
same.
many empty seats in front of them for like half a dozen,
Yeah.
8 rows.
Yeah.
I mean, it is like, talk about seating on a price break.
Yeah.
This is a really great example of
What
that.
about some more detective work? Look in the front orchestra. Let's see, on our maps, maybe where would be like JK Orchestra Center and
Yeah.
what we're looking at on the
Yeah.
left.
Yeah.
You see 3 seats that are surrounded by heat and yet they're completely empty.
Do you think those are house seats?
I do think those are house seats, Eric
Those are great
Nelson. I
development
think those,
seats, right?
what that
That's
tells us
development
is
seats.
that's where we are comping some
Yeah.
seats again and
Yeah.
again and again, because this particular analysis helps us see what seats are sold, not necessarily what seats are utilized. And so, sure, we address fill patterns through comps and things. And so this may not have been the pattern of everyone who was attending these performances because the organization might have filled in some of these gaps. But look at the job in front of them to fill in these gaps if they're going to do it through comps or by papering or house seats, right? There would be quite a bit of work by the marketing and box office teams to address the fill patterns here that they don't need to be doing.
Yeah. Do you think this includes comps in it, or is this
It
all
does
paid?
not.
This is all
I
paid
could,
tickets.
by looking at this, you could see that
Yeah.
this is just paid tickets. Yeah.
Aisles, you can see heat along aisles.
You can. Yeah. Yeah. You
All
can see
kind of
some
throughout the
preference.
venue. I mean,
Yeah.
until you get up to the gallery. But what's so interesting is how large this gallery is.
The whole venue is pretty large.
Yeah, it looks like it. And that gallery is massive. So what does it feel like up there when that massive gallery is empty or scattered?
Yeah, do they need it?
Wooey.
Do they even need for this show? Like if we said this was, I know we said this wasn't the fill pattern for one particular performance, but if all of the colored in seats were all the seats we sold to a performance, like if this was the snapshot of one show, should we have put the gallery on sale?
Okay, folks, it's time to put this data into action. You each have a blank scale plan of this particular example, and you are going to, without all of the data that we would normally have when we do this for clients, all the tools, you're going to draw just sort of a first pass ideal scale of house for this particular example. An ideal scale of house that manages perception of success in low demand, like this example that you're seeing here, and maximizes revenue in the highest demand situation, just like you would all do with our clients live and in person. So you've got some Sharpies there and a blank piece of paper, and in the old school way, Jill, you're going to each draw a scale plan. I'm going to have a look and see what we come up with.
Great.
Brad, why are you choosing to start with your blue?
I'm starting with the blue because I am thinking about how I'm going to use the lowest prices to support and improve the perception of success. So I'm thinking intentionally about how many seats do we really need at the low prices and where should they be if we were to optimize the perception of success.
Okay, time's up, folks. Pens down. It is time to finish your scale plans. So let's take a look and see what you've come up with. I wonder, Brad, should we start with you and see when maybe you'll turn around and show folks your scale plan? And
okay, you are going to think this was drawn by a 6-year-old boy, but this here is my map, and I will show my colleagues here my very scribbly, messy map. So to orient you, the red is the highest price and the blue is the lowest price, with orange being the second highest and green being the third highest. So I went with 4 prices in this particular haul. I went with an approach where the top price I approached almost more like a premium price, where it is so much higher than maybe what the highest price is of the venue currently offers, but that's why it's maybe not quite as much inventory. So I treated that as a premium where actually the second price becomes what they're closer to what their highest price is now. But I put in the lower price seats down in the front where we saw where we had the opportunity to address the perception of success. I tried to maintain price point options in the gallery as well was something I was thoughtful about making sure that as we fill to the back here, that we've got 2 to 3 price points available most of the time. But you'll notice there ain't no blue up there, friends. We're all fresh out of that price, basically by the time we get to the back of the orchestra.
Eric, let's see yours and what's different. What different choices did you make?
So this
How
is
neat that
mine. I tried to go very line-centric, filling in as best I could. I was really inspired by trying to get the smallest need possible. So that managing that perception of success there. So as you can see, so my red-orange is the highest price point, followed by blue, purple, and then green. So I really tried to just get all of that on the orchestra floor, and then if demand grows from there. And actually, I think we don't even need we wouldn't open up even the whole orchestra right from the beginning, because when we looked at that map, there's just not enough demand in this venue. So when we start to open up more inventory because there's demand, probably mid to rear of the orchestra and then upstairs into the mezzanine and gallery. I was then inspired by, if you're getting into a real demand situation, you want to see the per capita revenue go up because it's capitalizing on that demand you have there. So that's what I got to.
Jill, how about you? Let's see yours.
There are elements of both of yours. So I made the assumption that all we'd be opening to start actually was, down here on the floor. Although most of us have to plan for donors and subscribers in what this place calls the mezz. So what I wanted was price level 1 to be center filled in aisles, price level 2 to fill that in. I want people buying inexpensive seats to fill where we see gaps up front. And I chose to allow price level 2 to follow them. I think upon reflection and seeing and looking, you could easily swap price level 3. I would say, like Eric, the place that I have learned to get really strict is to say, if you're going to open that balcony, you'll have very few choices. So I'm assuming that gallery, in this case, when it's opened, has price level 1 and 2 only. And when we get to full demand, it's only price level 1 that's available to really boost that per cap. 3 price levels available in the third or in the first balcony, the mezz in this case.
Any questions that you'd have for each other's plans at the choices and decisions you've made?
I'm curious why 3 price points in the gallery.
Yeah, that was interesting to me as well.
Yeah, so I took an approach here that presumes if we are selling into the gallery, we are no longer selling at the same price points that we were selling those same price zones down here. These are going, if we're back here, we are in high enough demand. So even though I have the colors, and my red was super hot. Like this was a premium meant, and by making it premium by actually trying to limit availability in some cases so that I could maximize the per capita revenue on the red, meaning that my orange is probably closer to a price
Super
point.
important distinction for people who are watching, because our scale plans can be seen as being capitalistic, and we've heard the word predatory. And I want to be really clear about the fact that when we are opening up here in our scale plans, it is because demand is chugging right along. And so we are strategically pricing so that people are paying based on available inventory, meaning it's the last chunk of tickets left. And it also creates incentives for people to buy earlier. Now, there's a whole range of ways in which we need to train and ensure that that is done right and well. But it's very specific. And we see in this plan that there's buyers up there now. There may be subscribers up there now. So that's a change management process too. But we're very purposeful about how we treat upper reaches of balconies.
And I wanted to make sure that the scenario I had in my head here was, yes, these are going to be higher prices, but there is still going to be choice. There's still going to be choice for the buyers back
But you
there.
have it back further, right?
Yep.
And so that's a choice that people have to make. And ideally, they'd make that based on data.
They would make
Right?
it based on
So in my case, I would say, I know that when I'm in demand, people will pay $90 I have enough I can push. And your scale plan might say, actually, I have demand all the way through the demand cycle, even when I'm selling out at the $75 level, not just the $90 level. And I got to find a place to put it.
I got to find a place to put it to keep volume driving.
But what's really interesting, even in this conversation, we are as often happens, very fixated on a selection of seats that so very rarely we need in most situations. You're right. So, you talked about the 4 different venues. The times that we have, we all want to be sold out all of the time, folks. Like, of course we do. We'd love that for everyone, but it doesn't happen like that. And so, the very few times we need every single seat in the house, it happens. We look at data on this. It happens very, very rarely in most organizations' demand situations. So to your point, Jill, when we're there, and you referenced this earlier on in the episode, we get what we can get for those seats. It doesn't mean the lowest price. It might not mean the highest price, but let's plan and scale to ensure that the per cap continues to rise.
If you look at these 2 scale plans, theirs in particular, at this stage of sellout, we've got all 3, and you have 3 at this stage. All 4 price points. Same. All 4 price points. And as we grow, the number of price points shrink. The number of price points, and you've got, but the number of price points shrink as we go up. Yeah.
And that's likely in maybe a quarter or less of situations that those venues require those. So we would look at data
Right.
Well, to that
and make
point,
those
like
decisions.
a heat
sensibly.
map, just one heat map won't tell you the story
Right.
of this. You actually,
not.
I think what we're surfacing here is there's so many more questions
Yes.
that come up. And I think all three of us would probably say, I was hungry for more information to make these choices. So getting that level of information to say, I need to understand a bit more of the rhythms of what's going on here would be so important.
Right.
to
And we've
understand
just
that.
done this in 10 minutes. This is a 2-day moment that we have with clients that when we're asking all these questions,
With
and I'm
years
saying,
worth of data
years
going
worth of
into
data,
it, right?
yeah.
Yes,
and sitting in the seats in the actual
Right.
auditorium and all of the
Yes.
things that we can do. So,
Right.
Hey, look, if I had to pick a winner for most attractively coloured scale plan, Eric, you kept well within the lines.
Oh, thank you. Thank
So
you.
we'll find an award. Maybe you can take one of the bells home with you.
Oh, wow. Really?
Ding,
My
ding, ding.
gosh.
Oh, man.
Wow.
Look, there's
This day just got a whole lot better.
Thanks for joining us again. This was Scale Your Hall, a little look at how we might look at some data. I wonder what's happening in your organisation. How does perception of success look in your auditoriums? And how could changes to your scale plan make a difference to how every performance looks and feels successful in your auditorium? Okay, we've scaled a hall. How did that
delicious.
feel?
It was delicious.
It was a delicious
Yeah,
cake.
it's delicious
And
cake.
the icing on the cake is still to follow.
Yeah.
That's for the next episode.
Yeah.
Okay, one data point that we should obsess about relating to demand and one that we shouldn't. And so, Brad, what should we obsess over?
We could obsess more over a data point we call price point absorption. And what we mean there is by not just looking at how many seats have sold, but looking at the absorption of each of the price levels that we have to understand the relationship. This data point helps us understand the relationship between demand and price. It's the best way to link those two together.
Okay.
So then what we should stop obsessing about is the percentage of capacity sold using the same capacity number. Like let's define success and let's set a percentage of capacity that we expect to sell for each show and measure against that, and it cannot all be 100%. We have to stop the madness.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for talking about demand. We hope you've enjoyed hearing us talk about demand, and we will see you on the next episode of Leading the Way.